I smoked for 45 years and I couldn't stop. And then I finally, my doctor said, "You have first stage emphysema." And I'm like, "You got to be kidding me." He said, "Yeah, you got to cut the smile." So I'm like, I better read this book. So I read the book and I stopped.
Mel Gibson's story has spiraled. He went from working for decades, building an empire, and then watching nearly half of it disappear. That's exactly what happened when his divorce from Robin Moore became one of the most expensive breakups in Hollywood history, costing him over $400 million because there was no prenup. But that wasn't the final blow. Now, his ex-partner Oksana Grigorieva has revealed she's battling a serious health condition linked to PTSD from their relationship, reopening wounds many thought were buried. And the deeper you look, the darker this story gets. So stay with me. Heartbreaking news for Mel Gibson in 2025. Recent revelations concerning Mel Gibson's former partner have reportedly sent fresh problems through an already complicated chapter of his life, creating renewed emotional strain for everyone involved as new details became public. According to court filings released this year, Oksana Grigorieva disclosed serious health challenges that have not only affected her life in profound ways, but have also resurfaced memories and difficulties Gibson had long tried to distance himself from. In legal documents filed in 2025, Grigorieva revealed she has been diagnosed with a pituitary adenoma, which she described as a tumor that developed as a result of the stresses of litigation and bankruptcy. And she also stated that she suffers from PTSD connected to alleged domestic violence during the relationship. She explained that these health problems have left her extremely unable to meet significant financial obligations, including over $108,000 owed to an accounting firm that worked during the divorce process. How could such a diagnosis not stir up past wounds on both sides? Observers noted that this situation has reopened painful memories of a highly public breakup that once dominated headlines worldwide. The emotional aftermath of their January 2010 confrontation still lingers for many who witnessed the scandal from afar, and images showing Grigorieva with apparent bruising around her left eye resurfaced across the internet as soon as the filings became public again. During that period, Gibson admitted to slapping her once in an attempt to bring her back to reality, explaining that Grigorieva was shaking their daughter Lucia, and he later pleaded no contest to a misdemeanor battery charge in March 2011. The question many people quietly asked was simple: how can anyone fully move forward when the past refuses to remain buried? The new developments reportedly led to Gibson stepping back from public life once again, choosing silence instead of attention. When asked about Grigorieva's claims, his representatives stated that the actor had no comment, which mirrored a familiar pattern of retreat that began years ago when the scandal first unfolded. Gibson has postponed scheduled interviews and appearances, citing personal matters, and those close to him suggested he is trying to shield his private life while he navigates this renewed tension. The timing has been particularly difficult because he had been steadily rebuilding his career, repairing professional relationships, and quietly earning back creative respect after years of controversy. Many wondered how he might respond, and whether he could continue that positive momentum in the face of such heavy emotional circumstances. For Grigorieva, the situation carries profound medical, psychological, and financial weight, raising questions about her long-term well-being and what support systems may be available to her. For Gibson, the situation brings another test of patience, humility, and restraint, as old wounds are examined publicly once more. In private circles, there was a quiet acknowledgement that both individuals now stood at the start of a difficult and deeply personal road, one marked by emotional battles, shifting family dynamics, and the overwhelming weight of a past that still clings to them like a stubborn shadow. Those closest to the situation whispered that no matter how composed they appeared on the outside, the real struggle was happening behind closed doors, and that's where the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. Because when you strip away the headlines and the spotlight, you're left with something far more complicated. The public image versus the private man. Keep watching till the end to find out. The public image versus the private man. Beyond the noisy headlines and public scandals stands Mel Gibson, a complex and layered figure whose life has always seemed to pull in opposite directions, creating a contrast that continues to puzzle audiences and critics alike. Friends, fans, and even detractors often remarked on the strange duality surrounding Gibson, noting how Gibson the artist appeared to exist almost separately from Gibson the man. And many wondered how a single individual could embody both extremes so intensely. The conversation usually begins with the legacy left behind across decades in film, because few actors have shaped action cinema the way Gibson did in those early years. The rise truly began with Max Rokitansky in the original Mad Max series between 1979 and 1985, a performance that established a powerful screen presence defined by restraint, rage, desperation, and vulnerability, all contained inside a single quiet man with nothing left to lose. From there came Martin Riggs in the Lethal Weapon series, which expanded Gibson's reach beyond violence, showing surprising humor and emotional range, especially in the ways grief and trauma were portrayed. That series allowed audiences to see that Gibson was not only a believable action star, but someone capable of delivering believable pain wrapped inside comedy and chaos. But something much larger began forming beneath the surface, because Gibson had ambitions that stretched far beyond acting. The leap into directing happened in 1995 with Braveheart, a project Gibson produced, directed, and starred in, sweeping up the Academy Award for Best Director and Best Picture. That victory not only shocked the industry, but shifted Gibson's identity from action icon to respected visionary. Some people wondered how a performer known for explosive action scenes managed to pull off an epic historical film that moved audiences across the world. After exploring historical violence, Gibson made the choice to pursue something even more provocative, producing The Passion of the Christ in 2004. That film ignited controversy on a global scale. Some religions praised it, others condemned it, and charges of anti-Semitism began following Gibson everywhere. Critics questioned motives, questioned ethics, questioned intention, yet audiences flocked to theaters in massive numbers. The box office result reached over $600 million globally, setting a record for an R-rated release. For many observers, this moment defined Gibson's directorial identity as someone who chose to express stories through intense brutality, spiritual conflict, and raw imagery rather than through gentle persuasion. Yet after such success, everything collapsed. The infamous DUI arrest in 2006, with anti-Semitic comments made to an officer, triggered a downward spiral. Public disgust intensified when recordings emerged in 2010 featuring racist and abusive language directed toward Oksana Grigorieva. Many people began asking how someone so talented could sink into such destructive choices. Did art excuse behavior, or did behavior corrupt the art? Studios backed away, one after another. Directors avoided collaboration. Agencies withdrew representation. For a long stretch, Gibson remained essentially banished from mainstream filmmaking. Industry insiders described Gibson as unhireable. Some argued that such consequences were deserved, others questioned whether redemption was possible. Could someone with so much damage behind him ever return? Everything changed again in 2016 with Hacksaw Ridge. That film earned critical praise, 6 Oscar nominations, and a 10-minute standing ovation at the Venice Film Festival. Suddenly, people who had once condemned Gibson began reconsidering creative value. Film critic Matt Zoller Seitz reportedly described Gibson as the preeminent religious filmmaker in the United States, which reignited conversation about artistry versus morality. That moment reopened doors that many assumed would never open again. By the late 2020s, Gibson maintained a confusing position within the public consciousness. On one hand, supporters continued vouching for Gibson, including Jodie Foster, Whoopi Goldberg, and Robert Downey Jr., who urged the industry to offer a second chance. On the other hand, backlash remained intense. In 2023, Gibson was invited to serve as co-grand marshal for a New Orleans parade, only to be removed after threats targeted organizers. Some thought that proved forgiveness was selective. Others felt the punishment would never end, no matter what happened. Meanwhile, inside film sets, a completely different picture emerged. Numerous colleagues spoke warmly about professionalism, stating Gibson arrived earlier than everyone else, left later than everyone else, and treated every worker with equal respect. One producer explained that everyone on set reportedly loved Gibson and appreciated a strong work ethic. How could public perception contradict personal behavior so deeply? Was the outside image exaggerated? Or was the inside environment sheltered? That question followed every new project Gibson joined, including recent work on The Continental, a television series inside the John Wick universe. Some roles continued arriving, while other opportunities still vanished at the last minute. The entire career became a tug-of-war between admiration and condemnation. People often observed that the legacy left behind has become permanently tied to a complicated truth. Throughout an unpredictable journey filled with incredible artistic achievement and equally painful personal actions, Gibson emerged as a figure who refuses to disappear. Crisis manager Howard Bragman reportedly said that Gibson proved to be the exception to the rule. For many observers, that statement raised yet another question. Why does Gibson survive situations that have ended others? Maybe the answer lies somewhere between talent, timing, and the stubborn truth that human beings remain fascinated by contradiction. Some will always celebrate Gibson. Some will always reject Gibson. Yet, no matter how opinions shift, one undeniable reality remains. The artistic achievements will continue to sit beside the personal failures, creating a complex legacy that refuses to settle quietly. For years, fans and critics alike have tried to reconcile the brilliance with the breakdowns, asking themselves uncomfortable questions about redemption, accountability, and whether greatness can truly stand alongside deep imperfection without collapsing beneath its own weight. It became a conversation no one could avoid, one that grew louder with every new headline and every whispered rumor. And as the layers peeled back, the truth became harder to ignore. Which brings us here to a more honest look at Mel Gibson's personal struggles revealed. Come along as we unveil them better. Mel Gibson, Personal Struggles Revealed. Beneath the glitz of Hollywood success, Mel Gibson's private life has reportedly been full of deep struggles that often threatened to destroy both his career and his emotional well-being. And many people later said that his journey revealed just how complicated fame can become when personal challenges remain unresolved. Gibson's difficulties with alcohol reportedly began long before fame arrived, starting when he began drinking at just 13 years old, a detail that shocked many who wondered what kind of pressures could push a child toward substance use so early in life. Over the years, this habit evolved into something larger and darker. becoming a lifelong battle that followed him throughout every phase of his career. Court documents showed that by the early 1980s, his drinking had already spiraled far enough for him to receive a 3-month driving ban in Toronto after rear-ending another vehicle while intoxicated. Could anyone in that moment have imagined how much worse things would eventually become? Reports described how his drinking escalated throughout the years, reaching a point where he reportedly consumed 5 pints of beer with breakfast, a detail that revealed the severity of his addiction. According to friends and colleagues, Gibson eventually took time off work during the early 1990s to seek professional treatment, but sobriety proved difficult to maintain, raising questions about how relentless addiction can become even for someone with access to every resource imaginable. His own words painted a vivid picture of his struggle, explaining that he considered himself a happy drunk until I snap, and describing how relapse could happen suddenly when, in a heartbeat, in an instant, on an impulse, somebody shoves a glass of mezcal in front of your nose. Could a single moment undo months or years of progress? For Gibson, unfortunately, the answer was yes, more than once. His most publicized incident occurred in 2006 when officers pulled him over in Malibu for driving roughly twice the posted speed limit. A breath test confirmed he was over the legal limit, but the alcohol was only part of the story. What happened next shattered his public image. The official report documented how he launched into a shocking anti-Semitic rant, a moment that would follow him for years and become a turning point in public perception. The scandal dominated headlines, interviews, and commentary, sparking outrage around the world. This incident exposed not only addiction, but deeply concerning behavior that many people found impossible to overlook. Critics asked whether someone could return from such a moment, especially after decades of revered status in Hollywood. Gibson also faced legal problems tied to his personal relationships, including a widely publicized case involving his former partner, Oksana Grigorieva, with whom he shares a daughter. In 2010, Grigorieva filed for a restraining order, claiming Gibson had physically assaulted her during an argument. The situation intensified when recordings of their private arguments surfaced, containing threats, explosive language, and disturbing emotional volatility. In 2011, he entered a plea of no contest to a misdemeanor charge of battery, and court sentences included 3 years of probation, domestic violence counseling, community service, and a financial penalty. Gibson later claimed in an interview that he only slapped his partner once, alleging he had done so with an open hand to stop her from shaking their child. Yet even his own explanation raised questions. If someone reached such levels of distress during a private conflict, what chaos must have filled the home behind the scenes? Reports from that time also showed how frightening his behavior became during the 2006 arrest, when he threatened to ruin the arresting officer's life, damaged property, and continued making offensive remarks while in custody. Could a public figure ever truly recover from such well-documented breakdowns? Hollywood responded decisively. After public outrage intensified, industry support collapsed almost immediately. Talent agency William Morris Endeavor dropped him, film studios distanced themselves, and casting decisions shifted dramatically. He was removed from a cameo in a popular comedy sequel after backlash from the cast and crew, who objected to his involvement. Major publications speculated openly about whether his career was beyond repair. The New York Times even questioned whether his time in Hollywood had effectively ended. A well-known publicist described it as a nuclear disaster for Gibson's image, arguing that restoring trust might be impossible. One of the most bankable stars of his generation suddenly found doors closed, opportunities withdrawn, and a reputation few producers wished to publicly defend. In interviews, Gibson acknowledged how painful these consequences felt, particularly after returning to sobriety through Alcoholics Anonymous. In 2016, he said he had 10 years of sobriety, explaining how frustrating it felt to continually read reminders of past mistakes despite years of recovery. Could someone change internally and yet remain chained to the most damaging moments of their past? Many argued that accountability remained necessary, while others wondered whether redemption should remain available to anyone sincerely working to rebuild. Despite all attempts to refocus his life, his legacy remains deeply complicated, shaped not only by professional achievements, but also by legal controversies, emotional instability, and the painful aftermath of addiction. His struggles show how personal demons can undermine even extraordinary talent and global acclaim. His story often prompts the lingering question that many observers continue to ask: can any amount of success protect someone from self-destruction? For Gibson, the darkest moments became permanent points of reference in public memory, reflecting how one career, once extraordinary, transformed into a complex, cautionary reminder of how fame, trauma, addiction, and personal conflict can collide, leaving behind damage that may never be fully repaired. The emotional toll of family and relationships. The personal cost of fame reportedly manifested most painfully in Mel Gibson's family life, where private heartbreak unfolded for the world to witness, and where emotional wounds shaped relationships and professional direction in ways few outsiders truly understood. Friends close to the actor have often said that the public only ever saw headlines. Yet behind those headlines existed a complicated mixture of regret, emotional collapse, and an attempt to hold a family together while surrounded by judgment, pressure, and constant scrutiny. Divorce and heartbreak reportedly took center stage when Gibson's marriage to Robin Moore dissolved after 29 years together, a collapse that many described as one of Hollywood's most seismic relationship failures. Reports explained that the couple separated in 2006 following Gibson's highly publicized DUI arrest involving anti-Semitic remarks, an event that dramatically altered the way the world viewed Gibson and the way Gibson viewed himself. Although the separation began at that time, Moore officially filed for divorce in April 2009, citing irreconcilable differences, a phrase that looked simple on paper but represented almost 3 decades of shared life, family history, and deep emotional investment. The financial aftermath proved staggering according to insiders, with Moore receiving a historic $425 million settlement in 2011. Observers pointed out that Moore also secured entitlement to half of Gibson's film residuals for the rest of Gibson's life, a condition that stunned Hollywood insiders and became the subject of widespread industry conversation, as many wondered how anyone could recover personally or financially from such staggering loss. Following the settlement, reports documented that Moore purchased multiple properties, including 3 homes in Malibu, something many interpreted as a sign of rebuilding and recovery after an incredibly painful breakup. The aftermath of the divorce did not bring peace. Instead, a new chapter of turmoil reportedly began when Gibson entered into a relationship with Russian pianist Oksana Grigorieva. The couple welcomed a daughter, Lucia, in 2009, but the relationship fell apart with startling speed. In June 2010, Grigorieva obtained a temporary restraining order against Gibson, alleging abuse. Soon after, 6 shocking audio recordings surfaced, featuring Gibson delivering profanity-filled, racially charged comments directed toward Grigorieva. Listeners described the recordings as disturbing, angry, and deeply personal, and their public release launched a global scandal. Gibson denied the abuse allegations, yet admitted to slapping Grigorieva once, an admission that added more complexity and pain to the unfolding story. Many wondered how a relationship could deteriorate so dramatically, especially with a young child involved. The custody battle that followed became increasingly bitter, filled with legal delays and emotional strain. Reports stated that Gibson agreed to pay $750,000 to Grigorieva as part of their settlement, along with providing a home for Grigorieva and Lucia until the child turned 18. At that time, the agreement stated that the home would be sold and proceeds given to Lucia. Public records also revealed that Gibson filed a restraining order against Grigorieva to prevent the release of sensitive material, increasing curiosity about what remained concealed. Observers noted that Grigorieva cycled through approximately 40 attorneys during the case, a detail that left many asking how much emotional turmoil surrounded that legal battle and what toll it must have taken on both sides. Through each crisis, Gibson reportedly attempted to protect the most vulnerable members of the family. Friends explained that Gibson tried to keep children far from the spotlight, especially the younger ones who did not choose public life and who could easily be harmed by media scrutiny. Images of Gibson with Lucia or youngest son Lars reportedly remain extremely rare because the family prioritizes privacy above publicity. During a 2016 interview with the Sunday Times magazine, Gibson reflected on parenting by stating that every parent makes mistakes and that perfection is impossible, while expressing hope that mistakes were fewer than most. Could there be a more honest acknowledgement from someone who has been judged so intensely? Gibson expressed concern about the impact of the leaked recordings, saying that the greatest fear involved the emotional harm these controversies could cause loved ones, explaining that the situation should have been handled privately rather than through headlines, court documents, and viral audio clips. Despite all the scandals, struggles, and heartbreaks across decades, reports consistently confirm that Gibson maintains relationships with all 9 children and has become a grandfather many times over. Friends say that nothing in Gibson's life matters more than family, even though family life became the most painful battlefield of all. When standing back and observing everything that unfolded, the question quietly lingers beneath every chapter of the story. How much can fame truly give? How much can it silently take? And at what emotional cost does a public life continue when heartbreak becomes visible to the entire world? It's a question few dare to ask out loud, yet it shadows every decision, every comeback, every moment of silence. Because behind the headlines and the controversies lies a man trying to navigate the weight of his own legacy while still moving forward. And now, we face the next chapter. What lies ahead for Mel Gibson? What lies ahead for Mel Gibson? Amid ongoing personal controversies and recent heartbreaking developments, Mel Gibson has reportedly continued moving forward, both professionally and personally, trying to keep his footing in an industry that has seen him both celebrated and condemned. At 68 years old, people around him have observed a kind of resilience that has surprised many, as he continues balancing family responsibilities with an ambitious creative workload that would challenge even younger filmmakers. Some close to him have said that there are days when he appears weighed down by the past, but he also speaks about the importance of looking ahead instead of drowning in regret. Many have wondered how someone with such a turbulent public history finds the strength to stay in motion rather than withdraw forever. His personal life appears to have taken a more grounded direction in recent years, and those familiar with his inner circle claim that stability matters more to him now than it ever did during his earlier fame. At home, he reportedly shares his life with longtime girlfriend Rosalind Ross, a relationship that became public in 2014 and sparked widespread commentary due to their significant age difference. She is 34, while Gibson is 68, and the two welcomed their son, Lars Gerard Gibson, in 2017, making the child his 9th. When asked directly about the 20-plus year gap between them, Gibson reportedly responded in a calm, almost matter-of-fact tone, explaining that age is simply a number, and insisting that both partners are adults making their own decisions. He told one interviewer that they care about each other deeply, and that he does not feel the gap defines or limits the relationship in any way. Friends have remarked that Ross brought a steadying influence into Gibson's often chaotic emotional world, helping soften some of the volatility for which he was once infamous. Some observers have wondered whether companionship can alter a person's direction in life, particularly after public scandal and emotional battles. Ross has spoken about him with admiration, describing how he inspires her work, especially as she develops her own career in filmmaking. Their partnership reportedly blends romance, creativity, and collaboration in a way that both find meaningful. Despite a quieter family life, Gibson's professional calendar remains surprisingly full. Insiders have noted that rather than slowing down, he seems more determined than ever to create, direct, and perform, almost as if his artistic momentum is tied to personal purpose. He currently has 6 major film projects in development, and the most ambitious of them is the long-anticipated follow-up to his 2004 biblical epic. This new installment, titled The Resurrection of the Christ, has reportedly grown into 2 separate feature films. Part 1 is scheduled for release on Good Friday in 2027, and Part 2 is planned for release 40 days later on Ascension Day. The unusual structure has sparked curiosity, with Gibson describing the films as something approaching a spiritual and emotional odyssey. He reportedly used the strange comparison of an acid trip, suggesting the story will explore spiritual transformation in unconventional and vivid ways. Alongside that massive project, he is working on Lethal Weapon 5, both directing and starring, a responsibility he assumed after the passing of director Richard Donner in 2021. Some industry members have wondered whether the 5th installment of such a beloved franchise might be too risky, but Gibson appears fully committed. Other projects on his slate include a thriller titled Flight Risk with Mark Wahlberg, a crime drama called Boneyard featuring 50 Cent, and a coming-of-age mystery titled Boys of Summer. Observers have noted that every time it seems he is winding down professionally, an entirely new line of projects surfaces instead. Could creativity be the core reason he remains active rather than fading into retirement? Public perception complicates everything he does, and the question of redemption continues to hover over his career like an unresolved headline. In January, President Trump appointed Gibson as one of 3 special ambassadors to Hollywood, a symbolic position intended to assist with film industry issues, particularly the ongoing exodus of productions from California due to rising costs, regulations, and tax concerns. Gibson accepted the appointment and stated that he was ready and willing to help however he could. Critics questioned the optics, reflecting on his past controversies, while supporters praised his experience. With so much debate surrounding him, many have wondered whether redemption is ever truly possible for someone who has been publicly disgraced. Professionally, his January 2025 thriller, Flight Risk, failed at the box office, bringing in only $48 million worldwide and falling well short of expectations. Some argued that the marketing struggled, while others suggested audiences are still reluctant to support him fully. Within the industry, producers often acknowledge that hesitation exists when his name arises in casting or directing discussions. One producer remarked that doubts were natural early in the collaboration, but the experience changed after watching how Gibson worked each day. The producer stated that Gibson was the first to arrive in the morning and the last to leave at night, implying that commitment and professionalism remained intact despite past turmoil. Could hard work gradually rebuild trust where scandal once destroyed it? Some believe time and effort may eventually shift the public narrative, while others argue the past remains too heavy to overcome. Yet, as observers have noticed, Gibson does not appear interested in disappearing or retreating forever. Instead, he continues reshaping both his personal world and his creative legacy, even while carrying the weight of everything behind him. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.